He's not lonely. He's selective. And there's a difference. Somewhere between his last heartbreak and his first moment of true silence, he realized solitude isn't a sentence. It's a sanctuary. They say, he must be sad. They say, he gave up on love. But what if he simply stopped performing? These aren't excuses. They're 8 quiet truths most men don't admit until they finally feel whole again. If you feel this shift too, comment quietly. I've made peace with my quiet life. Being alone is not the same as being lonely. There was a time when silence scared him. It felt like punishment. He'd come home to an empty house and immediately turn on the television not to watch, but to make the room feel less hollow. He'd scroll through old numbers, rereading conversations that never led anywhere, just to feel something familiar. Back then, he equated stillness with absence. If no one was calling, no one was caring. If the chair across from him was empty, it meant he had failed at love. Because that's what the world teaches men. To be alone is to be unwanted. To be single is to be broken. But something changed. He didn't choose solitude overnight. It chose him gradually in the quiet left behind by disappointment, by loss, by years of noise that never brought peace. And somewhere in that quiet, he stopped fearing the echo of his own breath. He stopped needing to be seen, called, touched, reassured. He started listening to the one voice that had never left him, his own. Now, he wakes slowly, reads entire chapters without interruption, drives out into the hills with no destination and no need to answer to anyone. There's no pressure to be interesting, no need to prove he still has it. He simply enjoys the day because it's his. And here's the truth no one told him when he was younger. Loneliness is the hunger for someone else. Solitude is the satisfaction of being enough. In a 2021 Pew Research study, nearly 39% of unmarried men over 60 reported higher life satisfaction than married peers, citing freedom, emotional calm, and self-guided living as primary factors. He no longer defines his worth by who shares his bed. He defines it by how deeply he respects the man who sleeps in it. Because now, being alone doesn't feel like a void. It feels like returning to a self he once abandoned for the illusion of connection. And in that stillness, he finally feels whole. He doesn't want to explain himself anymore. There was a time when he tried to soften his silence so others wouldn't misunderstand, tried to answer patiently when someone asked, "Why don't you talk more? Why are you always in your head? Why are you so guarded?" He tried to explain that his quiet didn't mean coldness, that his pauses weren't distance, that the way he listened before speaking wasn't avoidance, it was respect. But after years of trying to be understood, he realized something. People don't always want to understand. They want to interpret. They don't hear his truth. They translate it through their own fear, impatience, or needs. And that's when he stopped explaining, not out of spite, not out of arrogance, but because he finally understood his peace isn't a debate. Now, when someone asks him why he doesn't call more often, he just smiles. When someone wonders why he isn't more emotionally available, he gently withdraws, not to punish, but to protect. Because he no longer feels the need to justify his preferences in the language of someone else's comfort. Solitude offers him a freedom that even love could never guarantee. The freedom to just be. No decoding. No adjusting. No walking on emotional eggshells. He no longer spends hours in conversations trying to explain the logic behind his boundaries, why he values silence over noise, why he leaves when the energy shifts in the room. He just leaves. According to a 2020 American Psychological Association survey, the top emotional burden cited by men over 55 in long-term relationships was the need to constantly manage perception and emotional labor. Not the lack of love, but the weight of always translating themselves. He's done with that, because at this age, what he wants most is simple, to be known without being dissected. And if that kind of knowing can't be found in another person, he's content, finding it alone, in silence that doesn't question, and in solitude that never interrupts. He's outgrown the illusion of forever. There was a time when forever was everything. He believed in it, fought for it, built his life around it. The wedding vows, the shared last name, the joint bank accounts, vacation plans, retirement dreams, all of it carried the unspoken promise, this will last. But then he lived long enough to learn what most people don't say out loud. Forever isn't always beautiful, and it's rarely guaranteed. He's seen marriages that made it 40 years, but were lifeless by year 15. He's watched couples stay together out of duty, not desire. He's witnessed "till death do us part" turn into "till we stop recognizing each other." And maybe he lived it too. Maybe he stayed longer than he should have. Maybe he tried harder than he could explain. Maybe he woke up one morning next to someone who hadn't truly seen him in years and realized, forever is just another word if there's no presence in it. So now, he no longer chases the permanence. He shares peace. He doesn't need someone to promise they'll be with him at 85. He wants someone who can sit with him in this morning silence without rushing to fill it. In a 2020 AARP report, 48% of divorced or widowed men over 60 said they preferred relationships that didn't involve remarriage or cohabitation. Not because they stopped believing in love, but because they stopped needing it to come with structure. Because real love, at this stage, isn't measured in time. It's measured in truth. And truth says, some people come for a season and leave a lifetime's worth of impact. Some endings are not failures, but necessary freedoms. Some forms of connection aren't meant to last forever. They're meant to wake you up. He's not afraid of companionship. He's just no longer hypnotized by forever. Because the older he gets, the more he understands. What's eternal isn't the promise. It's the peace that stays when the promises fade. He doesn't want to perform. He used to rehearse before dates. Mirror check the shirt. Rephrase the text 3 times. Smile on cue. Speak just enough. Not too much, not too little. He knew the script well. Compliment. Be attentive. Ask question. Stay fun, but not too intense. Share, but not everything. It wasn't just dating, it was performance. A well-trained routine of being appealing, of being right. And maybe it worked. Maybe he found affection, even love. But he also found something else, something heavier. Exhaustion, because every performance requires energy. And when the applause fades, what remains? He grew tired of it. Tired of small talk that went nowhere. Tired of being expected to prove that he was still dateable. Tired of curating his personality like a profile. Now, he wants something quieter, something honest. He doesn't want to be impressive. He wants to be real. He doesn't care if she's entertained. He cares if she can sit next to him while he reads and not take his silence personally. He doesn't care for fireworks. He prefers the fire pit slow, warm, crackling shared in the comfort of being known. In a 2019 Harvard meta-study on emotional fatigue in relationships, men over 55 reported that trying to meet ever-shifting expectations was one of the top sources of emotional burnout. And now, he listens to his body. If it's tired, he rests. If his thoughts are loud, he walks. If the room is full but his heart is quiet, he leaves. Not to offend, but to remain whole. Because performance might bring admiration, but only authenticity brings peace. He no longer wants to date like a resume. He wants to exist like a poem, messy, unpolished, slow to unfold. And if that's not enough for someone, then maybe they're still looking for a show. And he's not on stage anymore. He enjoys the predictability of peace. There was a time when he thought he needed excitement, plans, passion, a little chaos to feel alive. He mistook unpredictability for romance, mistook adrenaline for connection, mistook high-stakes emotion for proof that it mattered. But now, he knows better, because after enough emotional turbulence, arguments that start over nothing and end in cold silence, plans cancelled at the last minute, moods that shift like weather, he realized something sacred. Peace is not boring. Peace is stable. Peace is what safety feels like. These days, he knows how his mornings begin. Coffee. Quiet. No rush. He knows what his afternoons feel like. Slow, soft, intentional. No passive-aggressive tones. No. What's wrong? Games. No unexpected emotional minefields. It's not that life is dull. It's that life is finally his. He doesn't need someone to shake him awake with drama. He needs space to breathe without bracing for a reaction. In a 2022 Gallup study on aging and emotional well-being, men over 60 consistently ranked emotional predictability as a top factor in their happiness, even above financial security or physical health. Why? Because uncertainty drains energy. And at this stage of life, His energy is no longer infinite. It's sacred. He doesn't want to wonder if today will be tense. He doesn't want to decode someone else's silence. He doesn't want to feel like he's walking on a wire even when things are fine. He wants consistency. Not because he can't handle intensity, but because he finally knows it's not worth the cost. He lights the same candle at dinner every night, eats the same soup once a week, plays the same jazz record when it rains. And that routine, it's not bland, it's beautiful. Because the older he gets, the more he realizes that the best part of love wasn't the highs, it was the calm in between. And now, he no longer needs another person to find that calm. He simply steps into his own day and lets it be enough. His energy is no longer up for negotiation. There was a time when he gave too much. Time, attention, patience, explanations. Always available, always accommodating, always adjusting. He used to think it was love to show up, no matter how tired, to respond, even when his spirit had nothing left, to say yes, even when everything in him whispered no. But now, he guards his energy like a man who knows what it costs to give it away carelessly. He doesn't argue just to be understood. He doesn't explain his silence anymore. He doesn't sacrifice his rest to soothe someone else's chaos. Not because he's selfish, but because he's finally learned to be responsible for himself, not everyone else. It took years to understand that not every text requires a reply. Not every request requires a yes. Not every relationship deserves unlimited access to his attention. And that realization, it was liberating. Because his energy isn't just time. It's his clarity, his focus, his health, his peace. And peace, at this age, is earned. In a 2021 AARP behavioral health report, men over 60 who reported setting firm emotional boundaries experienced lower rates of anxiety, fatigue, and burnout compared to those still entangled in high-maintenance relationships. He now chooses where his energy goes with care. A long phone call with a real friend? Yes. A quiet afternoon tending the garden? Absolutely. An emotional tug-of-war with someone who never truly listens? No, thank you. He knows the difference now between connection and obligation, between giving and being drained. So if he doesn't show up to every dinner, if he lets a message sit unread for a few days, if he prioritizes silence over small talk, it's not neglect, it's self-respect. Because he no longer negotiates with his own well-being. He doesn't barter with exhaustion. He doesn't apologize for protecting what he fought to rebuild inside. And if someone takes that personally, they're not seeing him clearly. He's not disappearing. He's simply conserving, so that what he does give is true, present, fully his. He trusts less not because he's bitter, but because he's wise. He used to trust quickly, a soft voice, a kind gesture, a "we're in this together" smile across the dinner table. He wanted to believe not just in people, but in the possibility of something lasting. And for a while he did. But life has a way of teaching slow truths. He learned that not every "I love you" means forever. That promises can come easy to those who never intend to keep them. That not everyone who enters your life plans to stay. Some just come to rest in your kindness until they find a more convenient place to land. And after enough of those lessons, he stopped handing out the keys to his heart like party favors. Not because he's angry, not because he's closed off, but because he knows how much energy it takes to recover when trust is broken. He remembers what it felt like to doubt himself, not because he did something wrong, but because he let someone in who treated his openness like a liability. Now, he's not suspicious. He's selective. He listens more to actions than words. He takes longer to open his door, but when he does, it's intentional. He doesn't test people. He just pays attention. He no longer feels the need to give the benefit of the doubt when the signs say otherwise. He doesn't confuse compassion with self-neglect. According to a 2020 American Counseling Association review, older adults who exercised disciplined discernment in new relationships, especially post-divorce or widowhood, experienced higher emotional stability and longer-lasting peace than those who rushed back into connection out of fear or longing. He's not afraid of vulnerability. He just reserves it now like something rare, because that's what it is. So if he hesitates before letting someone in, if he's slow to say, "I trust you," if he walks away at the first sign of manipulation, it's not a wall. It's wisdom. And that wisdom, it doesn't come from fear. It comes from knowing that his peace, his hard-earned, quiet, everyday peace, is worth protecting. He finally likes who he is alone. This may be the simplest reason, and the most profound. He finally likes himself, not in an ego-driven, performative way. Not because someone else validated his worth, not because he fits some societal image of success or masculinity, but because in the quiet of his own company, with no one watching, no one judging, he feels at home in his own skin. It wasn't always this way. He spent years trying to be someone, the good partner, the provider, the emotionally available man. He bent, he edited, he tolerated, and too often he disappeared inside the roles others needed him to play. But solitude gave him back the mirror, and for the first time in years, he looked at himself and didn't flinch. He saw the laugh lines, the quiet strength behind his eyes, the disappointments that carved him, and the dignity that held him together when no one else did. And he liked what he saw. He doesn't need applause anymore. He doesn't chase admiration. He doesn't fear being misunderstood by strangers or even family, because the man he is enough for the life he's living. He eats meals in silence and savors them. He walks without purpose and finds peace in the pace. He speaks less and hears more, and what he hears most clearly now is himself. In a 2021 Psychology and Aging Journal study, mature adults who reported positive solitude, defined as time alone experienced as restorative, not isolating, had the highest levels of emotional well-being and self-concept clarity across all age groups. He's not filling time anymore. He's living it. He's not trying to be liked. He already likes himself. He's not waiting to be chosen. He's already chosen himself every day, without condition. And that kind of self-love, that's not a consolation prize. It's the whole win. He's not hiding from love. He's just not hungry for it anymore. He's not avoiding commitment. He's simply committed to his own truth. For some men, solitude isn't a last resort. It's a hard-earned gift, a sanctuary carved from years of noise. And if that sounds like you, you're not broken. You're aware. Say it softly, but proudly. I chose peace. I chose me. Because this quiet, present, deeply honest life isn't a backup plan. It's freedom.